Chapter 681. Photos of him begging for forgiveness went viral. Lin Che said, "My reputation." Gu Jingze approached her and said, "If your father did not offend anyone recently, his affairs would not have been exposed so suddenly. It gives me reason to suspect that the target was someone else." "By someone else do you mean me?" Lin Che pointed to herself and asked. Gu Jingze nodded. "That's right. At a time like this, you would probably attract more attention than him. You're also a much easier target than your father." Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze and internally sighed in admiration. He was worthy of his name as an unscrupulous businessman. Thoughts like these had not occurred to her at all. However, Gu Jingze had already thought of so many things because of one sentence from her. Lin Che said, "But I don't want to help him at all. He has never fulfilled any of his responsibilities to me as a father, both in the past and in the present. He had only hurt me and my mother. I don't want to give him the time of day at all." Gu Jingze said, "You don't have to bother with him. I'll get someone to find out what exactly is happening." "All right then." Gu Jingze said, "I will be busy with work today. Can you choose your wedding dress on your own?" "Of course I can. Go ahead. I can ask Abby along with me. Anyway, I'm just going to check the dresses out," Lin Che said. Gu Jingze placed his arm around her head and kissed her forehead. In the wedding dress boutique, Lin Che and Abby watched the staff present to them drawing samples of several wedding dresses. Lin Che looked at each wedding dress and found all of them very beautiful. The salesperson enthusiastically told her more about the dresses. "Mr. Gu has already sent someone here to instruct us that we will only select wedding dresses designed by Italian designers. Mr. Gu has very good taste. The works of our Italian designers have all won major international awards. There are numerous outstanding designs. You can take a look at these few first. The designers of these dresses are all pretty well known in their field. Their designs suit your figure very well too." The salesperson selected a few designers for her without hesitation. She only introduced the designers and their works. There was no need to mention the prices. Since it was Gu Jingze's wedding, she could definitely choose whichever wedding dress she wanted. Lin Che looked at a few of them. Although Abby was still young and did not appreciate the beauty of wedding dresses, she could not stop showering praises on the choices on display. The two of them looked at the dresses for some time and narrowed down the selection first. They were planning to keep the dresses there so that they could take the time to look at them carefully. Then, they left the store. However, upon reaching the entrance, Lin Che heard Lin Yukai's voice again before they even got into the car. Lin Che, don't leave." Lin Yukai came up to her from behind. He ran towards them in a frenzy while looking at Lin Che. Lin Che frowned. Her relaxed mood had been disrupted all of a sudden. She immediately said to Lin Yukai, "Father, I've already told you that I will not help you in this matter. You coming here doesn't change this." Hey. Lin Che, listen to me first. Don't be in such a rush to leave." Lin Yukai suddenly kneeled down with a thud. Lin Che instinctively stepped backward and looked down at Lin Yukai in surprise. "You." With both his knees on the ground, Lin Yukai looked at Lin Che. "Little Che, your father is begging you. Help me out. With your current status and power, isn't this a trivial matter? Just help me even if it's out of pity. You're in such a powerful position right now, but I'm being investigated. Wouldn't it cast a shadow on your reputation too?" Lin Che smiled grimly and looked at Lin Yukai. "All of you tried ways and means to cause trouble for me, but now, you're even asking for my help. I'm not so magnanimous as to forget the past completely. When I was young, I lived with the nanny in her room. After I grew up, you wanted me to marry a fool. When I got together with Gu Jingze, you wanted me to share him with your daughter. If I can forgive all of this, I really don't know what is considered unforgivable. I really regret it very much, Lin Che." He looked up at Lin Che with his tears and snot streaming down his face altogether. "I was blind. I was wrong. I was blinded by greed. I was afraid that you would get revenge on me after you attained power, so I wanted you to give them a leg up too. I've already learned my lesson now. I really shouldn't have treated you that way. Because I'm your father and I watched you grow up, give me a chance to enjoy my late years, alright? I can't spend the rest of my life in jail." He looked at Lin Che. "You're the only one who can save me now, Lin Che. I can't pin my hopes on anyone else. No one in our family is more successful than you. Right now, you're really famous and wealthy. Furthermore, Gu Jingze dotes on you so much. Other people can't help but envy you. Please be magnanimous and help me out. Unaffected, Lin Che headed towards the car. Beside her, Abby glanced at him and said to the person beside her, "Why aren't you getting rid of him? The situation looks so ugly." Abby got into the car. Seeing that Lin Che was sitting there silently, she said, "So, it turns out that every father is bad." Lin Che said, "Of course not. Your father treats you very well. I really don't like my father because he has never been a father to me apart from giving me a place to live. A father would not be willing to sell his daughter off for profit. Neither would he be willing to push his daughter into a fire pit. Thus, I won't help him no matter what he does. But my mood turns sour whenever I see him. I keep recalling many bits and pieces of my past. I think of the fact that I almost didn't have a father. It's such a shame that I don't know what fatherly love is at all." "All right, in that case, your father is indeed worse than mine." Before Lin Che had even arrived home, she saw that a photo had suddenly been released on prominent websites. The photo showed Lin Che and Lin Yukai on the road. It was obvious that the photo had been taken from a distance. However, it was still pretty clear. Lin Yukai was kneeling on the ground. Lin Che's expression was cold and there was clearly a sneer on her face. There was an explanation of the photo below and the headline stated, "A well-known celebrity is ruthless towards her father after becoming famous. She sneers even when her father is kneeling and begging for forgiveness." The article stated that Lin Yukai was Lin Che's father. As Lin Yukai was the mayor, his family was doing pretty well. However, at the moment Lin Yukai was being investigated. There was also a possibility that he would be charged with corruption. In the photograph that was taken recently, it seemed that Lin Yukai had asked Lin Che for a favor, but she obviously behaved in a way that was not befitting of a daughter. Instead, her father had kneeled down to beg her for forgiveness. Mo Hilling looked at the photograph and grinned evilly. Good, good, I'll see if the Gu family dares to take someone like Lin Che into the family. She's a heartless actress who will be detested by everyone. Li Mingyu looked at Mo Hilling's sinister expression. Hilling, don't go overboard. You can't hide something like this from Gu Jingze. Mo Hilling said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter. What can Gu Jingze do to me?" Li Mingyu was about to say something again but Mo Hilling was already ignoring him. Li Mingyu always felt that she took things too far. But it was obvious that Mo Hilling did not know that trouble was ahead. She was really being arrogant. Chapter 682. I didn't expect Lin Che to be worth so much money. Lin Che had not expected anyone to actually photograph such a scene. Online, the netizens were recklessly cursing her out and expressing their disapproval towards her on various platforms. Some people commented, "Is Lin Che abandoning her family now that she's famous? She made her biological father get on his knees for her. She's so heartless. She's literally worse than a beast." Numerous celebrities became embroiled in conflicts with their families after gaining popularity. The conflicts were always about money. There had been several examples before this. When money became involved, the fantasy surrounding a celebrity was completely broken, triggering the discontent of many fans. As she read the comments, Lin Che truly found them laughable. Perhaps many netizens had not read the actual article. Even if they had, they would not know the truth either. In any case, they simply started berating her for treating her father this way. Indeed, maternal and paternal love was probably noble in the eyes of many. However, there were several fathers who really had no love to give and only cared about profiting. Wouldn't she be a total saint if she continued to love a father like this? Yu Minmin quickly called Lin Che upon seeing the news. "Lin Che, are you all right?" This incident was not a minor one. Yu Minmin was worried that Lin Che would be upset. Lin Che said to Yu Minmin, "It's all right. Don't worry. I saw through my father a long time ago. He wouldn't have kneeled down in front of me if not for the fact that he knew we were being photographed. He wouldn't have begged me like that if not for the fact that he knew this was all a scheme. He had planned all of this from the start. I was merely set up by my father. Why would I feel sad for a father like this?" Yu Minmin consoled her. "All right then. I'll return to the company shortly. We'll deal with this together then." "Hey, don't worry. Mr. President's matters are not minor ones. Just settle matters on your end." Alright, I know that nothing will happen either since Gu Jingze is around to help you settle things. Gu Jingze had already blocked all media outlets once the news had been released. The news was no longer being reported and the media outlet which first released the news had been closed within an afternoon and ceased operations. However, the news still spread very quickly across the internet. Of course, it was impossible to block it. Although it was not spreading so quickly and its impact had lessened slightly, there were still some comments awaiting the aftermath and awaiting Lin Che's response. There was also speculation about why the media outlet had deleted the article and did not pursue it further. Exactly what kind of backing did Lin Che have that was powerful enough to make a media outlet disappear without a trace in the blink of an eye? Lin Che found it slightly difficult to stomach her food at lunch. Seeing that she was feeling unwell, Gu Jingze clasped her hands atop the table. Let's go over to Chen Yucheng's for a checkup. Huh, what, me? No, I'm completely fine, I don't need to go. Let's just go and take a look. I'm serious, I'm completely fine, I'm just wondering how to best settle this. Lin Che smiled and flipped their hands over. Then, she said, I'm just thinking about what you said. Sure enough, you were right about someone using my father to deal with me. I've already managed to find the culprit. Huh, really? That's right, I'll deal with in the afternoon. You can rest at home if you don't have anything on. You found the culprit so quickly. Although I don't have evidence, I basically already know who did it. However, just then, Gu Jingze received a call from his family. Over the phone, Mu Wanqing said softly that Gu Shand was asking Gu Jingze to make a trip back home. Gu Jingze glanced at Lin Che and agreed to Mu Wanqing's request. He gestured for Lin Che to go ahead and eat first. He wiped his mouth and changed his clothes in preparation to return to the Gu residence. Not long after Gu Jingze left, Lin Che saw that Lin Yukai actually had the nerve to call her. Lin Che lifted her phone in disbelief. She pondered a little before deciding to protect herself. She pressed the button to record the call before saying to Lin Yukai, "Father, you've already set me up. Why are you calling me now? Did you want to see how your daughter is after being cursed at?" Lin Yukai quickly chuckled and said, "Lin Che, don't say it like that. I only did it because someone threatened to hand my evidence to the authorities if I didn't do it. Right now, you've saved your father's life just by sacrificing your reputation for the moment. Don't you think that's great?" Lin Yukai hastily tried to calm her down. The person who had made him do this was very good at manipulating him. He had threatened him and placated him at the same time. On one hand, he would have lost his job if he did not do it. On the other hand, he would get a large sum of money if he did it. As he looked at the large amount of money, he thought that even a fool would choose the money. He had not expected the other party to be so generous. He was willing to spend so much money just to cause trouble for Lin Yukai. Thus, Lin Che was worth so much money right now. Lin Che scoffed, "You really do love your daughter. Little Che, you're so powerful now. You can get whatever you want. Even if you stop working as an entertainer and stay at home as a young madam, you'll be a cut above the rest your whole life anyway. At the moment, you're merely being criticized a little. At most, just go back home instead of being a celebrity. Wouldn't that be fine?" "That's enough. Did you call just to say this?" "Of course not. I am still on your side. I just wanted to tell you to let this incident go. Don't pursue it further and don't retaliate either or you will exacerbate the situation. It won't be good for either of us. It's better to just let me be an honest mayor until I retire peacefully. If you continue investigating, the situation will only snowball and become worse. Don't you think so?" You're truly selfish. But I've already recorded our conversation. I want to know if the netizens will still think that I was wrong for making you kneel." After hearing this, Lin Che said while saving the recording. "You recorded this?" Lin Yukai's first reaction was shock. Then, he slowed his voice down and said, "Releasing it publicly will only make everyone continue discussing the incident. My advice to you is to stop worsening the situation. The public would still have a poor impression of you if you make a big deal out of this, right?" "That's not for you to worry about." Lin Che scoffed and hanged up. Lin Che immediately sent the recording to Yu Minmin and asked her if they could use this. Yu Minmin said, "We may be able to use this, but we can't just use it as it is. Your father is right about one thing. If we really release it, people will still be skeptical of you. It won't be good for your image either if people criticize you terribly. Let me think of a solution. Meanwhile, Gu Jingze called Gu Jingze into his study room in no time. Gu Jingze looked at Gu Jingze and immediately threw the newspaper onto the table. Look at what's happened now. The situation has blown up instead of subsiding. You said that you could settle things. But it's obvious now that you've become more hesitant and weak because of Lin Che. Gu Jingze, you're truly a disappointment. Chapter 683. She could not believe the results of the DNA test. Gu Jingze looked at Gu Jingze. He knew that he was being weak and hesitant. He looked at Gu Jingze. Grandfather, isn't this a good thing? I'm hesitating and being weak only because ordinary people are all like this. I've simply become more normal. Isn't that a good thing? Ordinary people, you're the successor of the Gu family. You can never be ordinary. No day in your life is ordinary because you're going to become the head of the family. Yes, I will become the head of the family. But I also want to be a good husband. To be a good husband, I should do all I can for my wife. I should support her when she needs me to back her up. I should be considerate of her when she needs help. Jingze, you're wrong. A wife is a partner you should merely make use of. It's only right for her to help you out all the time. But you should not be helping her all the time. But grandfather, Gu Jingze looked at Gu Jingze. In the past, I never thought that I would want to become a good man for the sake of a woman. But now, I do when I'm together with Lin Che. I also never thought that I would want to become an ordinary person one day because of her. But now, I want to be that as well. Grandfather, you're the one who told me to marry her. Because I have her now, I experienced what ordinary people do in their daily lives. I came into contact with a world that I had never touched. That's enough. If I knew from the start that you would pamper her so much, I definitely wouldn't have told you to marry her. Gu Jingze scoffed and immediately continued, you're not allowed to hold your wedding. Gu Jingze clenched his hands. What if I insist on having the wedding? In that case, relinquish your position as head of the family. Gu Jingze continued, even if I have to make Jingming give up his current position and return to take your place as head of the family, I definitely won't hand the family over to you. Humph. Gu Jingze left with a flick of his sleeves. Gu Jingze stood unmoving for a long time. However, Qin Hao called at this moment while he was silent in his persistent thoughts. Sir, the results of the DNA test are out. All right, send them to my office now. As he had thought, the results of the DNA test showed that there was no possibility at all of the child being his. Clenching the results in his hand, he said to Qin Hao, make 2 copies, one to be sent to the Mo family and the other to be given to the Gu family. Yes, sir. Qin Hao was really looking forward to the reaction of the Mo family when they saw the results. They might have been fantasizing about producing an heir for the Gu family, but now. In no time, the Mo family received a delivery. The moment Mo Hilling's father took the envelope, he felt that it was quite light. However, his heart started sinking. He pulled its contents out to see what it was. It was the results of the DNA test. Mo Hilling's father trembled as he opened it up. At that moment, his entire face lit up. From the start, he had supported Mo Hilling wholeheartedly, thinking that Mo Hilling would give birth to the bloodline of the Gu family. In that case, the Mo family would have a connection with the powerful Gu family. How grand that would be! This was the first child of the Gu family's new generation. For the sake of their own bloodline, they would have definitely been willing to recklessly spend money on the child all the time. The Mo family would then achieve meteoric success. But now, all of a sudden, in a fit of fury, Mo Hilling's father called Mo Hilling. Mo Hilling had been sleeping when she received the call. In a daze, she mumbled, "Father, I was sleeping. You disturbed my sleep." "You're still sleeping. I've seen the results of the DNA test. You fool, the child in your stomach isn't Gu Jingze's." Mo Hilling immediately shouted, "It's not. That's impossible. Where did you get the results from?" "Someone sent it by mail. Didn't you say that Gu Jingze had extracted your DNA? He must have sent it." Mo Hilling's father continued angrily, "I can't believe it isn't Gu Jingze's child. This child of mine, you've really put me in trouble. Is the Mo family going to die in your hands now? I told you a long time ago to give up and stop provoking Gu Jingze recklessly. But now, That's enough. I don't believe you. I won't believe you no matter what. The child must be Gu Jingze's. Fine, Gu Jingze has fabricated results for Lin Che's sake. That must be the case. It's all because of Lin Che. Humph, I won't let Lin Che off. Hey, Hilling, Mo Hilling immediately hung up. Mo Hilling's father did not know what this stupid lass was going to do again. But he could not afford to offend the Gu family again. If she wanted to take the risk and do something, she could do it herself. Mo Hilling sat on the bed and harbored malicious thoughts. She was sure that Gu Jingze was deceiving her. But if he had really fabricated the results of the DNA test and was insisting that the child was not his, then absolutely no one would believe her given the Gu family's power. Lin Che right, Lin Che. She needed Lin Che to die right now. If Lin Che died now, Gu Jingze would not continue to lie. Everything would be completely resolved as long as Lin Che was dead. Even though Gu Jingze wanted Lin Che to rest at home, Lin Che was not a person who could stay idle. She had already arranged with Abby to go to the company and have a video call with Yu Minmin. They would discuss ways to resolve this issue. If Lin Che stayed at home, she would only become more anxious and her imagination would keep running wild. It was better for her to go out and get some air. When Lin Che heard her phone ringing, she picked it up and saw that Abby was calling. She answered the call and said, "Abby, I'm nearly there. I'm about to get into the elevator." Lin Che. Just then, however, a voice as cold as ice traveled from behind her. It seemed to be laced with a vengeful fury. Lin Che turned around only to be faced with the black muzzle of a pistol instead of Mo Hilling's face. Lin Che subconsciously stepped backward and shrank into herself. Mo Hilling. Lin Che, go and die. If you die, Gu Jingze won't resort to underhanded methods for your sake. He can only accept my child and stop looking for excuses. You Mo Hilling, think about this clearly. You're holding a gun in your hands. Where did you get the gun? If you kill me like this you'll be a murderer. When the time comes, what will happen to you and your child? A murderer. If that happens, Gu Jingze won't leave his child without a mother. He will definitely save me. Even so, you'll be a murderer. Your child will become the child of a murderer too. How can you bear to? Lin Che looked at the pistol while retreating backward step by step. She felt as if death was slowly approaching. She could even sense the violent weapon. But was she going to die just like this? Because Mo Hilling had gone mad? Of course, she refused to. She looked at Mo Hilling with her teeth clenched together. She turned to see that the number shown on the elevator was still flickering. As if she had thought of something, she walked backward and said to Mo Hilling, "Actually, I'm sure that Gu Jingze still has feelings for you." Mo Hilling's eyes flashed. Really? How do you know? Chapter 684. She said that the child in my womb was Gu Jingze's. Lin Che immediately jumped backward and into the elevator. Mo Hilling froze. Then, fury instantly appeared on her face when she registered what was happening. She rushed towards Lin Che. She seemed to have forgotten that she still had a pistol in her hands. When she saw Lin Che pressing the button to close the elevator doors, she immediately reached her hands out to hit the elevator buttons and doors. The elevator doors opened again upon being touched. Thereafter, Mo Hilling jumped straight into the elevator. Sensing the situation, Lin Che immediately used her quick reflexes to snatch Mo Hilling's pistol from her. Mo Hilling shouted loudly, "You slut! You deceiving whore! I knew from the start that you were best at deception. You duped Gu Jingze and now you're even trying to hoodwink me. It's impossible, I tell you." During their struggle for the pistol, it brushed past them a few times. Lin Che thought that she would hear a gunshot each time. Her entire back was already drenched in cold sweat. At last, Lin Che managed to grab the handle of the pistol amidst Mo Hilling's shouts. Lin Che then bit Mo Hilling's hand without hesitation, causing her to cry out in pain. The pistol immediately left Mo Hilling's hands and Lin Che grabbed it. Seeing that the elevator doors were slowly closing, she had no time to think and threw the pistol out in one swift motion. The elevator doors closed with a whoosh and time also seemed to stop at that moment. Now that the pistol was gone, Lin Che immediately felt much more relaxed. However, the elevator remained in place and not a sound could be heard. "Lin Che, I'm definitely going to kill you. You. Just then, the lights in the elevator suddenly went out. The emergency lights immediately lit up. The green color of the lights made them feel suffocated. Had the elevator malfunctioned? Mo Hilling froze before suddenly turning happy. She looked at Lin Che through narrowed eyes and leaned in dangerously close. Lin Che, you see that? Even heaven isn't helping you. Lin Che said, huh. Without the gun, do you think I would still be afraid of a pregnant woman like you? Right now, you should be thinking about how to keep yourself alive and not how to kill me. Only then did Mo Hilling look down at her hands. It immediately occurred to her that Lin Che had already thrown the pistol out earlier. Mo Hilling looked at Lin Che's beautiful face with her teeth clenched. It was strange that she was becoming more and more beautiful. She was even more beautiful now compared to the first time she had seen her. The more she looked at Lin Che, the angrier she got. She immediately headed straight for Lin Che. Lin Che shouted, "Let go. Let go of me, Mo Hilling. I won't restrain myself if you continue behaving like this. You don't want anything to happen to your child, right?" In her mind, she thought that the child was ultimately innocent. She could not use too much force against Mo Hilling. She was worried that she would really hurt the child otherwise. Mo Hilling was still attacking her. Lin Che had no choice but to aim at her head and hit it forcefully. Ah! Mo Hilling took a few steps backward upon being hit. Although Lin Che's head hurt as well, she could still withstand that level of pain. At this moment, the elevator suddenly moved. Mo Hilling was so frightened that she immediately stuck herself to the wall of the elevator. She looked around while listening to the sounds outside. It turned out that people had come to save them. Someone knocked on the door and asked, "Is there someone inside?" "Is there?" Lin Che quickly said, "Yes, there are people here. There are people trapped inside." "Who are you? What's your name? How many people are there inside?" "I'm Lin Che." "Dear me, Lin Che. Is Lin Che trapped inside? Good God, how did this happen? Quick, quick, get people to rescue them and say that Lin Che is trapped inside. If we don't settle this quickly, it will cause a huge accident." The moment they heard that Lin Che was inside, the people outside quickly called for more hands to get them out of the elevator as soon as possible. It seemed that they were very anxious as well. Everyone knew that Lin Che's company was in this building. They usually saw her around as well, so they were not surprised that she was trapped inside the elevator. However, they suddenly saw the pistol on the floor. Someone even asked in confusion, "Why is there a gun here? Is it fake?" Behind Lin Che, Mo Hilling could no longer stand it at this moment, especially when she heard the fearful voices of the people outside when they heard that Lin Che was here. She quickly moved closer to the door and said to them, "Don't touch my things. That's mine." "You, who are you?" the people outside asked curiously. Mo Hilling shouted, "I'm Mo Hilling." "Mo what? Who's that? Does she work in this building too?" The confused voices of the people outside made Mo Hilling even more upset. She immediately responded, "Fine, fine. Do you know Gu Jingze? Let me tell you, the child in my womb is Gu Jingze's. You can go and ask around if you don't believe me. If anything happens to my child now, will you be able to bear the consequences?" Gu Jingze. Although the people outside did not completely believe her, they nevertheless instructed someone to find out if there was such a person. They also quickly asked her, "You're pregnant, right?" "That's right. The successor of the Gu family is in my womb. He's worth so much more than any celebrity or entertainer. All of you have no sense. You're so anxious just because of Lin Che. The person that you should truly be anxious about is the child in my stomach. If you don't get me out of here now, just wait until someone looks into this." Someone outside hastily said, all right, don't get anxious. We'll get someone to fix the elevator immediately. Miss Lin Che, do you feel suffocated inside?" The people outside felt that Lin Che was a more reliable person to ask. Although the other person sounded like she was in the same situation, she did not sound reliable from the way she spoke. "I don't feel suffocated, but it's definitely hotter here than it is outside." "Miss Lin Che, please wait a moment. We've already informed your company staff." Hearing this, Mo Hilling immediately became even more worried. "Are you only going to inform Lin Che's subordinates? Are you not going to inform Gu Jingze? Humph, you bunch of power-hungry dogs. All of you are truly short-sighted. If anything happens to me, all of you can forget about living, yet you're still kissing up to Lin Che right now. All of you can't even figure out who you should be fawning over. Please don't be angry, miss. That's not what we meant either. We've already sent someone to inform your family members. A while later, the people who had left came back and told the people there that Mo Hiling was right. They had asked the people involved and all of them had said that there did seem to be such a person. They immediately became even more anxious. On one hand, they had to look for people to save them. On the other hand, they also had to think of a way to let Gu Jingze know. Miss Mo, why don't you give me Mr. Gu's number? We definitely don't have connections with someone as powerful as Mr. Gu. We can't get into contact with him easily either. The people there to save them thought that if what she said was true, then she would definitely have Gu Jingze's number. They could also verify her words by asking for his number. Mo Hiling immediately whipped out her phone. The signal in this rotten elevator was simply bad. Her phone was not even displaying any numbers. However, she was fortunately still able to access her contacts. She quickly showed them the number. The moment they saw the number, they knew that it did not belong to an ordinary person because its numbers were very special. Perhaps she had really been telling the truth and not lying to them. Chapter 685. I should have shot you dead earlier. The people outside quickly called Gu Jingze to inform him while the rest of them stayed behind to continue the rescue operation. Mo Hiling turned around to look at Lin Che. It's all your fault. Everything is your fault. Lin Che looked at Mo Hiling. I can understand that you don't want to lose Gu Jingze. But stop lying to yourself, alright? Gu Jingze is no longer the Gu Jingze of the past. He no longer loves you. Ha, you mean that he loves you since he doesn't love me anymore? Mo Hiling looked at her as if she was about to go mad. This I didn't say that either. But right now, he wants to live together with me. He dotes on me a lot and likes me a lot too. Even if his feelings for me are not as deep as love, I know that he likes me. PFT, there is no way that he would like you. He has feelings for you only because he can touch you. No, I trust him. I can sense his feelings for me. Even if some things are left unsaid, I can still sense them. Mo Hiling, you can't demand for a person's heart. These are emotions. Our marriage may have been a mere contractual one in the beginning. However, we truly want to be together right now. So I hope that you won't keep bothering us, alright? You're not even that old anyway. You'll still be the rich and young heiress of the Mo family even after giving birth to a child. You'll be able to get any man you want. No, Mo Hiling shouted loudly, I want Gu Jingze but I can't have him. He's already in your hands now, so of course, you can say that. But there's only one Gu Jingze. Do you think you would still fall for someone else if you left Gu Jingze? No, you wouldn't. If that happened, you would only become crazier and angrier than I am now. Lin Che jolted. She had indeed thought about it before. Whether she would fall in love with anyone else if she no longer had Gu Jingze. Yes, she would not. Lin Che looked at Mo Hiling. I may not fall in love with anyone else. But at the very least, I can still love myself a little more and treat myself better. Even if I don't fall in love with anyone else for the rest of my life, I won't humiliate myself like this. I won't let myself be stuck in the past. Even if I'm all alone, I will still look towards the future and not stay in the same place. Mo Hiling sneered. You won't understand how I feel because you've never lost anything. All of you have forced me into madness. Gu Jingze forced me to become like this. Just then, they heard a noise outside. People had started crying, the doors open. The elevator rocked back and forth. Mo Hiling clung to the elevator wall in fear. She cursed loudly at the people outside. Do you know what you're doing at all? Can you bear the consequences of putting my child in shock? The people outside already knew that Gu Jingze had, in fact, picked up the call earlier. Upon hearing that Lin Che and Mo Hiling were trapped in the elevator, he simply said that he would be there soon. However, they could sense the big boss's worry. Perhaps Mo Hiling was telling the truth. They had no choice but to be patient with Mo Hiling so that she would not be unhappy. Miss Mo, don't worry. The elevator won't drop. Our elevators have double reinforcement. What you're experiencing now is a normal occurrence. Don't worry. We're also doing this to get you out of there as soon as possible, okay? Mo Hilling's mood improved immensely as well upon clearly sensing the change in their attitudes. Humph, I'm merely reminding you. You should know how important the child in my womb is. You're finished if anything goes wrong with my child. Yes, of course, we won't dare to hurt your child. Don't worry, we'll get the two of you out immediately. We've already informed Mr. Gu as well. He said that he will be here shortly. From inside, Mo Hilling banged on the elevator doors. I don't want to stay with this cheap woman for even a minute. It's the same for me, Mo Hilling. I don't want to spend another minute with you either. Mo Hilling sneered and looked at her. I should have shot you dead immediately just now. Huh, it's too late for you to regret it now. Lin Che leaned against the wall and quietly listened to the noise outside. Sure enough, the doors started moving again a while later. It was not long before the doors were pried open to reveal a slim gap. Ah, Miss Lin, Miss Mo, come out quickly. Delighted, Lin Che immediately walked towards the opening. However, Mo Hilling quickly pushed her aside. She looked at the people outside and asked, don't you know who should be given priority? Humph, all of you are truly clumsy. You took such a long time to pry the doors open. Move aside. Now that they knew her identity, they did not dare to do anything to offend her either. They watched Mo Hilling make her exit first before hastily saying to Lin Che, Miss Lin, we're so sorry. We're so sorry to have actually trapped you inside the elevator. Quick, come out. You're not hurt, right? Your fans would definitely not let me off if they found out about this. Lin Che said a simple thank you before swiftly leaving this narrow space. Just then, the people outside suddenly shouted in surprise. The crisp sounds of footsteps could be heard from afar. Gu Jingze walked quickly while leading his subordinates into the area. The two of them had been trapped inside for a very short time before being rescued, so Gu Jingze had only just arrived too. Upon seeing Gu Jingze, Mo Hilling immediately rushed towards him. However, Gu Jingze simply walked past Mo Hilling amidst the shouting and came immediately to Lin Che's side. Everyone was still gasping in awe at the fact that they had seen Gu Jingze. They were so shocked at the unpredictability of life. They were even able to witness such a scene and became stunned by what happened later. Prior to this, they had carefully catered to Mo Hilling's whims. However, right now they were realizing that Gu Jingze was completely unconcerned about Mo Hilling and instead headed straight for Lin Che. He looked down and pulled Lin Che up. He heaved a sigh of relief only after carefully examining her body and confirming that she was fine. You're fine, right? Yes, but Lin Che glanced at Mo Hilling at the side. The people around them were all slightly surprised. Mo Hilling had repeatedly said that she was pregnant with Gu Jingze's child. But why was it that the person Gu Jingze was worried about was actually Lin Che? However, without waiting for the shocked reactions of the others, Gu Jingze raised his eyebrows and his subordinates immediately began clearing the venue. Upon seeing that everyone had been cleared out, Mo Hilling went up to Gu Jingze and said, Jingze, Gu Jingze sensed Mo Hilling's hands creep up his arm. He waved his arm and pushed her away. Mo Hilling was immediately frightened by the expression on Gu Jingze's face. She stared at his face with a hint of hope that flashed in her eyes. He was merely angry. He behaved like this when he got angry. No, but she had never seen such a terrifying expression on his face. It was as if the man before her was not Gu Jingze but a demon. Gu Jingze looked at Mo Hilling with loathing. I believe you've already seen the results of the DNA test. Your child has nothing to do with me at all. Please don't use it as an excuse to keep pestering me again. And don't get closer to Lin Che by even an inch. No, I don't believe it. You're lying to me. You fabricated the results. Chapter 686. Li Mingyu finally revealed the truth. Gu Jingze looked at Mo Hilling. Are you going to lie to yourself to the end? Are you not even going to believe the results of the DNA test? From the start, I knew for a fact that your child would not be mine. The sperm that I stored is still intact in a safe place. It has never been in any danger. I'm sure that your child isn't mine, but you don't believe it. I just want to ask you why you're so confident that the child must be mine. Right now, you still don't believe me even though the results of the DNA test are out. In that case, what exactly do you believe? Gu Jingze's pressing gaze made Mo Hilling feel immense pressure. She was so shaken up that her thoughts became even more chaotic. She looked at Lin Che who was standing at the side. After thinking for a long time, she said even more agitatedly, "It's her. You're using underhanded methods to reject your own child only because of her. Jingze, do you not love me anymore? Are you really going to abandon me just like this? If the child isn't yours, whose can it be? While undergoing the procedure, no one else touched me. The child must be yours." Hilling. Just then, however, a slightly weak voice penetrated the air. At the entrance, Li Mingyu had been stopped by security guards and was currently looking at Mo Hilling inside. Upon seeing him, Mo Hilling's tears stopped. Li Mingyu said, "Gu Jingze, let me come in. I have something to say." Gu Jingze gestured to the bodyguards to let Li Mingyu in. He immediately came to Mo Hilling's side and quickly held her up. As he looked at Mo Hilling, he had a complicated expression on his face. Then, he said, "Stop kicking up a fuss. Come home with me." "No, I'm not going home. Who do you think you are? How dare you tell me to go home? I want to stay here, together with the father of my child." Mo Hilling looked at Li Mingyu with disdain. Li Mingyu was nothing in front of Gu Jingze. He could not compare to Gu Jingze in any way. So what if he treated her well? So what if he was pretty well off? He was simply no match for Gu Jingze. "That's enough. You want to be together with the father of your child, right? Let me tell you." He grabbed Mo Hilling by the collar. "I'm the father of your child." "What?" 3 pairs of eyes looked at Li Mingyu. Mo Hilling looked at him blankly. "What rubbish are you spouting? I've never slept with you before. Are you dreaming? How are you worthy of being my child's father?" "Hilling, don't you remember? Back then, you told me to find out where Gu Jingze stored his sperm. But I couldn't find it after exhausting all methods. Gu Jingze concealed it too well and I didn't have any other choice. I already told you that I didn't want to disappoint you either. Furthermore, during that time, I felt that you were great and we got along really well. I really liked you and wanted you to marry me, so I used my own sperm for the procedure. I lied to you that it was Gu Jingze's." Mo Hilling's face immediately turned completely white. She grabbed Li Mingyu with trembling fingers. "You're lying to me. You're lying to me. It's impossible. Even if you refuse to acknowledge it, this is the truth. Hilling, I initially thought that you would marry me on account of your being pregnant with my child. Even if I'm not as good as Gu Jingze to you, I'm still a wealthy tycoon in a nation. I've done so much for you and I can give you a blissful life. I thought that you would agree, but I didn't expect you to eagerly look for Lin Che and tell her about your pregnancy. I had no choice but to leave you alone temporarily. I wanted to look for another opportunity to make you leave Gu Jingze so that you would give up on him too. I thought that you would obediently return to my side if you knew that Gu Jingze did not want your child. That's why things have dragged on until now. I'm sorry, Hilling." "No, get lost. I don't believe it. How can I be pregnant with your child? How is that possible?" Mo Hilling shouted in surprise. "That's enough. Hilling, I can give you more than Gu Jingze can." "How am I worse than Gu Jingze?" Furious, Li Mingyu grabbed Mo Hilling's arms. Mo Hilling looked at Li Mingyu in a frenzy. "How are you comparable to him? You're no match for him in any way. He's the one and only God's favored one. No one can compare. Who do you think you are? How dare you compare yourself to him?" This was exactly what Mo Hilling thought, so she said it out loud carelessly. The moment she finished speaking, a hand slapped her on the face. Li Mingyu looked at Mo Hilling with a sour expression. His temple was still throbbing because of her words. You hit me. You actually hit me." Mo Hilling started laughing loudly. The contorted expression on her face was terrifying. As she looked at Li Mingyu, she suddenly pushed him away. A crazed smile appeared on her face and she immediately ran out staggering. "How can it be?" Lin Che mumbled. She did not expect things to actually be like this. However, at that moment Gu Jingze pulled her arm from beside her. He looked at Lin Che. "That's enough. Don't poke your nose into other people's affairs. I'll take you to the hospital first." "There's no need. I'm fine. I was only trapped inside for a few minutes." Lin Che looked outside. "I really didn't expect the child to be Li Mingyu's. Li Mingyu has always been at loggerheads with me. I can understand why he would want to oppose me and to make a laughingstock out of me. At last, the truth had surfaced. Gu Jingze led Lin Che out. Upon seeing that there were people taking photographs, he immediately instructed them to delete the photographs. Initially, the people outside had been extremely curious about what was happening. They had not expected Lin Che to be involved with these wealthy tycoons and wondered exactly what role she played among them. A story about a celebrity and a wealthy tycoon always piqued interest. However, it was only after many difficulties that they had managed to capture Gu Jingze's awe-inspiring appearance in the photos they had just taken. Yet, the bodyguards had confiscated their phones and forced them to delete the photos. It was only when the photos had all been deleted that Gu Jingze quickly led Lin Che away from this place. That day, Lin Che went to look for Lin Yukai with the recording. She had asked Lin Yukai to come to Gu Jingze's office. Gu Jingze did not appear but left the office to Lin Che and Lin Yukai. He merely instructed some people to wait outside. Lin Che knew that the security here was the best. The soundproofing was also the best. Naturally, no one would disturb her conversation with Lin Yukai here, unlike at her company. After all, there was more gossip if there were more people. She immediately threw the recording onto the table. "Father, you're welcome to take it and listen to it. I'm afraid that you'll be heavily criticized if the recording gets out. But I'm not as brainless as you. I could have simply released the recording and let everyone know how you treat your biological daughter. But I didn't do that because dirty laundry shouldn't be aired in public. I still wanted to settle this between ourselves." Lin Yukai looked at the thumb drive on the table. He knew that Lin Che did not want people to keep bringing up this incident as that would taint her reputation as well. That was why she wanted to reduce the impact of the incident. After all, dark spots on a celebrity's past would be raised to castigate her even after many years. Lin Che said, "Father, stop thinking about looking for support. I believe you already know about what happened between Mo Hiling and Li Mingyu, right? They're busy dealing with personal matters right now. They may not even be able to settle things between them. How can they possibly have time for you?" Lin Yukai said, "Ah, so, you mean it's true. Mo Hiling really has schizophrenia?" "What?" Lin Che asked in confusion. Chapter 687. Had Mo Hiling gone mad? Lin Yukai replied, "It's just a rumor. I just found out that Mo Hiling has been taken away for treatment. They've engaged many doctors because she's not in a good mental state." Lin Yukai observed Lin Che's expression. He had gone to look for Mo Hiling. He had wanted her to fulfill her promise to pay him and to confirm again that they would not continue investigating his Swiss bank accounts. However, he discovered that Mo Hiling had unexpectedly gone mad. They said that she had schizophrenia and that Li Mingyu had taken her away for treatment. Only then did Lin Yukai realize that there was no one left to help him. He looked around the office. He knew that this was Gu Jingze's company, Gu Industries. It looked massive lined along the street. Lin Yukai sighed and said, "Little Che, whatever the case, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. I'm your father. Don't you think that we shouldn't treat each other like outsiders?" Lin Yukai did not want to offend Lin Che either. After all, she was so powerful now. He had had no choice but to offend her previously because he had been blackmailed and had been offered some money. Now that Mo Hiling was unable to fend for herself, she definitely would not be able to help him. He absolutely had to come and beg for forgiveness. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive if Lin Che really set her heart on opposing him with Gu Jingze's help. He hastily said to Lin Che, "I was in the wrong this time. I wouldn't have hurt you if I hadn't been threatened. In the future, I will definitely follow your instructions only. I'll do whatever you tell me to." "Alright, little Che. Right now, you're the most successful one in our family. I'm very proud of you as well. What's more, you're Madame Gu now and you're also a famous celebrity. You can't be bothered to deal with an unimportant person like me, right? It would be so tiring to deal with me. You can use the time to go to a beauty parlor or go on a vacation. Either option would be better than wasting time on me, right?" Quote. This time, he was sincerely begging for forgiveness. He had lowered himself so much. Lin Che could not be bothered to speak to a despicable person like him at all. She also found it difficult to believe that her own mother was in love with a man like this back then. Perhaps she had randomly found another man just to heal the wound caused by her previous relationship. Otherwise, a father like this, even though he was her own biological father, it was difficult for her to feel any emotion towards him. No matter how she looked at it, she could not believe at all that her mother would have fallen in love with someone like her father after leaving the Uncle Lu whom she had loved. Lin Che said, "Yes. I don't have much time to waste on you. It's best if you cooperate with me." That day, Lin Yukai held a press conference immediately. He expressed condemnation of the person who secretly took the photograph of him and Lin Che and said that he would be taking legal action against that person. At the press conference, he said, "Ultimately, Lin Che and I are related, she is my daughter. What happens between us is our family matter. Back then, I had let Lin Che and her mother down. Although it looked as if I was kneeling in front of my daughter that day, in actual fact, I was kneeling in front of Lin Che's mother. I made a momentary mistake back then and did not look after Lin Che's mother. I caused her to lose her mother when she was 10. I caused her mother to die at a young age. I've always felt like I let her down all these years. That's why I kneeled down, hoping that she would forgive me in heaven." Thus, Lin Che was not being heartless. I know that Lin Che has been working hard. I also clearly knew that people had repeatedly been trying to set her up. They even took photos in secret and deliberately posted them online to taint her reputation. How terrifying all of this must have been for her. My heart really aches for my daughter, so I'm prepared to speak out on her behalf. Besides, daughters are the lovers of their fathers in their past lives. In my younger years, I kneeled on the floor with my daughter riding on my back. I've also never had any qualms about things like these. Unlike what people are saying, there's no serious ethical problem with kneeling in front of my daughter either. I hope that everyone refrains from distorting my intentions. Don't believe the falsehoods of those recalcitrant outsiders." The netizens immediately understood what was happening upon seeing Lin Yukai's statement. Many netizens genuinely pitied Lin Che for having lost her mother when she was 10. Some people commented that it really seemed like they had been set up. The person involved had already stepped forward to clarify things. There had been no fight between them. Some people suspected that the two of them had already reached an agreement in private since many days had passed before he spoke out. Others wondered if they were doing this to create hype again. It so happened that Witch's Diary was about to premiere. However, it did not seem that they were doing this to generate hype since it tainted her own reputation. She would not go so far as to taint her own reputation just to create hype either. People started to speculate wildly online. Nevertheless, at least this incident had finally come to an end. Most people still felt that Lin Che's father was right. Someone had probably set them up deliberately. The entertainment industry was chaotic, to begin with. People snatched roles and mutually set each other up. They appeared pleasant on the surface but did plenty of bad things behind the scenes. In actual fact, the netizens were very interested in many of these conspiracy theories and slowly began guessing at the culprit who had framed Lin Che. People would probably stop bringing up this incident after some time. At the airport, Li Mingyu instructed the doctor, "Later, just follow Hilling closely. You don't need to care about anything else." "Yes, Mr. Li." Li Mingyu frowned and sighed upon seeing Mo Hilling sewing clothes for her child in a frenzy. He walked towards her and pulled her arm. "Hilling, we're nearly home. Once you're home, I'll hire the best doctor to treat you. You'll definitely get better. Jingze, come and take a look. Aren't the clothes I made for our child pretty? Our baby will be able to wear it once he's born. My mother said that I must assist my husband and bring my child up properly. I'm especially obedient and I'm especially good at being Madam Gu. I'm better at it than anyone else." Li Mingyu felt his scalp tingle upon hearing Gu Jingze's name. His expression turned gloomy as he looked at her. However, he still managed to tolerate it when he glanced at her stomach. Whatever the case, the child in her womb was his child. No matter what, the child had to be born safely first. Li Mingyu pulled Mo Hilling to her feet. "Come on, get onto the plane." "No, I don't want to get onto the plane." She had exhausted Li Mingyu's patience. He glared at her viciously. "Get onto the plane quickly." Mo Hilling was so frightened by his glare that her expression was full of terror. She frantically grabbed her head and shouted while running out. Only then did Li Mingyu instruct his subordinates to bring her onto the plane. When faced with such a lunatic, he really wondered when exactly he would be forced into insanity as well. Yu Minmin had stayed in S City for a few days. Finally, she and Gu Jingming were heading back to B City. The infections on Gu Jingming's wounds had already completely disappeared. His minor injuries could be dealt with at home. The moment the president's private plane landed, a row of people rushed towards the glazed tile palace. The doctor had already prepared everything in the glazed tile palace. The entire process of treatment could be carried out directly in the glazed tile palace. Lin Che was presently waiting in the glazed tile palace. Gu Jingming could not meet just anyone after returning. Lin Che was no exception either. Thus, she first headed to the guest hall to await Yu Minmin's return. Lin Che immediately felt immensely relieved when she saw Yu Minmin. "You're finally back. How are you? After getting onto a naval vessel and going to the island that day, you really didn't get hurt, right?" Chapter 688. Madam President returned to B City. She pulled Yu Minmin in a circle and looked her up and down. She only stopped worrying when she saw that all her limbs were intact. Yu Minmin said, "Relax. I'm fine." You, on the other hand. Mo Hilling nearly shot you. You're truly lucky to have escaped. Lin Che said, "Fortunately, I'm fine now. You don't know how irritated I've been because of work over the past few days. During your absence, I was about to die from irritation." "Alright, I know you're not good at management. I heard that you asked Gu Jingze for help on a lot of things." "Yes, luckily, I could ask him anytime. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known anything." Yu Minmin smiled. "That's enough. I'm back now. You don't have to trouble the great President Gu himself anymore. A small company like ours can't afford to hire a deity like President Gu." Lin Che said, "Don't be so anxious to return to the company. Only the president's affairs are important. It makes no difference if we go back after finishing up here." Yu Minmin looked inside. "It's all right. There are no major issues. We just have to wait for a full recovery. There are so many people around him. Does he even need me?" Lin Che giggled and said, "Don't things get done faster with you around? Mr. President feels comfortable if you're within his field of sight. Wouldn't that be better?" Upon being teased, Yu Minmin pushed her directly. "By the way, since you're back, let me introduce Abby to you." "Oh, Abigail, right. I really want to meet her. This little girl is really quite amazing. I can't believe she followed you to C Nation." "Yes, the little girl is quite fun to be with. You'll know it when you see her." Lin Che had just come by for a visit. Thereafter, she left so she wouldn't continue disturbing Yu Minmin. When Yu Minmin returned to the room, Gu Jingming was still resting on the bed. The doctor had just examined him and had left only after confirming that everything was fine. He stayed outside on standby. Yu Minmin asked, "Your wound didn't reopen, right?" She walked towards him and pushed his clothes aside to take a look. The scars were visible against the honey-colored muscles of his sturdy chest. His body was initially perfect but was now littered with numerous scars. Although he looked very wild and seemed really masculine, Yu Minmin still felt her heartache for him. When exactly would he recover fully from such a huge injury? Gu Jingming heaved a sigh when he sensed Yu Minmin's hand traveling across his chest. He immediately pressed Yu Minmin's hand to his chest and looked down at her. "All right, I'm fine now." Yu Minmin was still looking at his scars. "You always say that you're fine. But we must still heed the doctor's words as to whether you're all right." "Of course, I know my own body best. What do you know? You're used to being the president. You're always so unreasonable and only do what you want to," she mumbled, thinking that Gu Jingming had not heard her. However, in the next moment, Gu Jingming had already hooked his arm through hers. "Why, does it hurt?" Yu Minmin hastily looked up and asked, thinking that something had happened to him. Gu Jingming's eyes crinkled in a smile. "Of course I know if my body is fine or not. But I'm afraid you won't know even if I explain it to you." "Why don't I?" He suddenly pulled her onto the bed. He quickly flipped his body over and pressed himself down on her. "Let you experience it for yourself. Then you'll know." "Hey Gu Jingming, no way, no way. What are you doing? Get off me," Yu Minmin started shouting. He still dared to move so much when he was in this state. Was he crazy? The doctors who had examined him over the past few days had all been so frightened by his injuries. Yet he still dared to mess around. How many people was he going to scare to death? He was not an ordinary person, he was the formidable Mr. President. If there was anything wrong with him, it would definitely be a huge issue. She was aware that she could not bear the consequences. She would not be able to account for any problems that arose. Quick, get off me, Gu Jingming. I'll be able to get off you quickly if you just cooperate with me. Gu Jingming kissed her on the lips. Even though he had not recovered fully and was clearly a patient who had laid in bed for a few days, he was incomparably aggressive at this moment. He started to pull her clothes off at lightning speed. He left a trail of marks on her chest and caused her skin to heat up. Then, he embraced her and kissed her shoulders before kissing her lips. His lips clung to hers as he deepened the kiss. A while later, the doctors pushed the door open and entered. They had initially thought that the president was sleeping and intended to sneak in quietly to check on the president's body temperature. But they did not expect. The two doctors nearly died of fright when they entered the room together. They were shocked by the scene before them and frantically retreated. However, Yu Minmin had already seen them. She hastily pushed Gu Jingming away. Someone came in. Gu Jingming frowned and glanced at the door that swiftly closed. What a bother. The doctors were still in a state of shock after leaving the room. Upon seeing the flustered expressions on the doctors' faces, the people outside who had been waiting quickly asked, "Why? Did something happen?" Stunned, one of the doctors replied, "Nothing, nothing." The other doctor gasped and said, "Hee, the president and the first lady." Sensing the situation, everyone immediately understood. Wow, what an explosive piece of news. In broad daylight. Of course, all of you didn't see how intimate they were being. They were really kissing so fiercely. Thereafter, the door clicked open and everyone quickly shut their mouths. They watched as Yu Minmin came out from the room with a bashful expression on her face. Her cheeks were flushed red and there was a hint of tender passion about her. As a result, the way everyone looked at her became more suggestive as well. Yu Minmin seriously wanted Gu Jingming dead. How could he torment her like this? Yu Minmin frantically said, "You can go in now. Mr. President is calling for you." They quickly smiled and nodded. After walking through the doorway, they turned around to look at Yu Minmin. Everyone was envious of how lucky Yu Minmin was to be able to cling to the ridiculously handsome president all the time. Who was the one spreading rumors about how their relationship was completely unhappy? It was total nonsense. Yu Minmin quickly went to look for Lin Che. She was so ashamed that she would not dare to return to the glazed tile palace for the time being. Everyone's attitude towards Yu Minmin was very good when she returned to the company. They greeted her repeatedly and welcomed her back. As they were all so familiar with each other, Yu Minmin knew that these people merely liked to joke around. After all, some of them had started working with her even before she became the first lady. Yu Minmin looked for Lin Che as soon as she could and found Lin Che together with Abby. When she saw Yu Minmin come in, Lin Che immediately introduced her to Abby. "This is Yu Minmin, this is Abby, go ahead and get acquainted with one another." Abby looked her up and down and said, "Oh, Lin Che talks about you all the time. Nice to meet you. You're the first lady, right? I know you. I watched your wedding on television. But I didn't really pay much attention to it at the time." Yu Minmin smiled and looked at the young girl as well. It went without saying that she had good genes. She was really quite pretty although her style was slightly unusual. "Nice to meet you. Lin Che mentions you all the time too. We've known each other for quite a long time. We didn't meet up because I was in S Nation all this while." "Yes," Abby said. Yu Minmin continued, "By the way, since this is our first time meeting, let's have a gathering tonight. All of you must have been busy during my absence. Since I'm back now, let me treat you to a meal as a proper apology." Chapter 689. Are you here to torture us single dogs? Hearing this, Lin Che smiled and said, "An apology isn't necessary. You had no choice because of external matters. But you must still treat us. Although you've been busy all this while, at the very least, you were by Mr. President's side. You must have had a much better time than we did, spending time with him every day. Give us a treat, give us a treat." Yes, I'll treat you," Yu Minmin said helplessly. "Let's meet at Jinsha tonight." "Fantastic, hee. Lin Che first informed Gu Jingze about her plans when she returned home. Hearing this, Gu Jingze readily agreed to let her go out too. She had been very busy recently. This was a rare opportunity for her to let loose. That night, they went to Jinsha. Lin Che had asked Shen Yoren to come along. With the addition of Yu Minmin and Abby as well, they could probably consider it late as night. Yu Minmin and Lin Che were first to arrive. Shen Yoren only arrived later. The moment she came in, Shen Yoren immediately asked Lin Che, "Has Mo Hilling really gone mad?" Lin Che replied, "I don't know. I never asked. But judging from what they said, it's probably true." Shen Yoren said, "Serves her right for thinking up ways to plot against you. She ended up plotting against herself instead." Lin Che said, "True. That's why people should be more kind-hearted. At least they wouldn't cause their own death." Yu Minmin nodded in agreement. "It wasn't your fault, to begin with. Neither was it Gu Jingze's. It's normal for a couple to break up too. Besides, she had been lying to Gu Jingze all this time. She pretended to be a good person in front of him but was actually devising evil plans in secret. In the first place, it's wrong to behave like that in a relationship. You should be honest in a relationship." "Precisely," Shen Yoren added. "She wasn't honest towards him and even plotted to tie him down by having a child. In the end, she hurt herself. Of course, she deserved it." Just then, someone knocked on the door to their private room. Thinking it was Abby, Lin Che told her to come in. As expected, Abby had arrived. However, there was someone else behind her. It was actually Shui Yang. Lin Che was slightly surprised. Shui Yang entered the room and looked at them. He bowed sheepishly to everyone and said very politely to Lin Che, Sister Yu." Lin Che looked at Abby and realized that she was the one who had brought him here. Abby asked, "Why? The more the merrier. All of you know one another, right?" Lin Che said, "I was just wondering when you two got to know each other." Abby replied, "I don't have much to do at the company since all of you have been busy recently, so I've been watching Shui Yang act." Lin Che looked at Abby slightly guiltily. It was true that she had been too busy recently. She had not paid much attention to Abby. Abby said, "Come in, Shui Yang. This is a friendly gathering. You don't have to be so nervous." Of course, Shui Yang was nervous. The entertainment industry was big on hierarchy. He was Lin Che's and Yu Minmin's junior, to begin with. Also, he knew Lin Che's and Yu Minmin's identities. If he were to consider it, he was probably nothing compared to everyone else in the room. Although he did not know Shen Yoren, she was definitely not an ordinary person if she was gathered here with them. Thus, Shui Yang could not help but feel slightly nervous. Lin Che glanced at Yu Minmin before looking at Shui Yang. It sure was easy for this handsome lad to attract young ladies. Yunshi had been attracted to him immediately. So had Abby. But Yu Minmin felt quite happy about it. The fact that he could attract young girls meant that they had been right to sign him on. It would be good if he could continue attracting young girls like these in the future. Currently, male idols really had it much easier than female idols. After all, there were more fangirls than there were fanboys. Since they were attracted to the opposite sex, of course, they liked pretty boys more. "Since you're here, just come in. Why are you being shy? Are you shocked from seeing all these old women?" There was no way Shui Yang dared to say that. However, although they were not old and were merely in their 20s, an 18-year-old boy like Shui Yang did indeed find them old. Shui Yang said, "Sister Che, you're killing me." Abby said, "If that's not the case, just sit down. Quick, sit, I'm about to die from hunger." Jinsha catered to the preferences of the younger generation quite well. The seats were not placed around a round table but a long table with couches beside it. The setup was very cozy and they felt like they were in their own homes. They ordered a table full of food. As Shui Yang was the only boy at the table and was so young, he immediately became the subject of everyone's teasing. He was still young and felt constantly shy at being teased. Thus, he did not even dare to speak. Lin Che said, "Shui Yang, remember to tell us about it if any woman in the production crew comes onto you. You're the only male celebrity our company is nurturing now. We'll protect you." Shui Yang's face turned even redder immediately. Abby nearly spluttered. "No way, are people so straightforward even on the film set? But it makes sense. We're like that too. People are becoming more and more open about this now. It seems like the same trend exists in the East. Yu Minmin said in disbelief, don't listen to her talk rubbish. She's just joking around. Yu Minmin looked at Lin Che. Look at you. You didn't learn how to be proper from Gu Jingze even after being together with him. You're so dirty-minded too. How can the great President Gu tolerate you? Lin Che tilted her head and pursed her lips. He's fine with it. He's fine with it. Yu Minmin asked, or do you mean that Gu Jingze looks proper but actually likes that you're dirty-minded? Hee. Ha, what's wrong with being a little dirty-minded? Is it good to be a prude? If that really was the case, then I hope Mr. President will remain a prude for the rest of his life. If that happens, you better not regret it. Damn you, Yu Minmin's face turned red. When it came to being dirty-minded, she was no match for Lin Che. Although the attention was no longer on Shui Yang, he still felt uncomfortable and kept eating with his head bowed. After all, the people they were talking about were people whom ordinary folks could never come into contact with. The way they spoke so bluntly about those people was really unbelievable to him. However, what happened next was worse. Someone knocked on the door again. Thinking that it was the waiter, Lin Che called him in. The person who came in was not the waiter, but Gu Jingze. He pushed the door open and walked in first with Chen Yucheng following behind him. Lin Che immediately asked in surprise, "Hey, why are you here?" Gu Jingze turned to look at Chen Yucheng. He was the one who had brought him here. Chen Yucheng shrugged and said, "We came to take a look. We were afraid that you were talking behind our backs." Shen Yoren instantly stood up. "What? It must be your doing. No wonder you kept asking me which hotel we were at." There was space for Gu Jingze and Chen Yucheng to sit together with them. Fortunately, they had booked a huge private room. Otherwise, it would have definitely been cramped. Then, Gu Jingze and Chen Yucheng immediately sat down as if this was their own house. It seemed like a routine to them. Yu Minmin was completely dejected and complained, "No way. It was supposed to be late as night, but all of you brought other people along. I'm not treating all of you to dinner. The person who earns the most should treat us. Humph. All of you are tormenting me, a single dog. And you're even asking for a treat. I'm not that nice." Chapter 690. This couple really gave them the goosebumps. Lin Che looked at Yu Minmin in disbelief. "In that case, why don't you ask Mr. President to come?" Yu Minmin glared at her. Of course, she did not have a death wish. Forget the fact that Gu Jingming was still injured. Usually, she absolutely did not even dare to bring Gu Jingming out with her. She could not bear the consequences if anything happened. After this incident, it was even clearer to her that the president had to be immensely careful. Any incident was a huge incident. Of course, she did not want to bring trouble upon herself. Shui Yang quickly moved to the side. As he looked at Gu Jingze and the young man he had brought along with him, he felt that the man had remarkable poise. Even though he did not know his name, he thought that he was probably not an ordinary person. He suddenly felt a little anxious about whether he was the odd one out. Lin Che stopped teasing Yu Minmin at this point and introduced them to one another first. "This is Abigail. In C Nation, her name is Lin Bai." "Oh, I know, you're the daughter of that Wesley family who came to C Nation." Chen Yucheng had heard of her. He smiled and stretched out a hand. He said, "Nice to meet you." Abigail replied, "Nice to meet you. And you are?" "My name is Chen Yucheng. I'm an ordinary employee." Abigail was confused. She suddenly remembered something and asked him, "Hey, are you a doctor?" "Oh, do you know me?" Chen Yucheng tilted his head. Abigail replied, "Of course. I've heard my father talk about you. In the past, they thought that I had psychological issues and wanted to engage the best psychiatrist for me. They wanted to hire you to examine me, but my father didn't manage to find you. Apparently, you had already left America. Only your family members were there. He found your father, but your father said that you were conducting a study and would not have time for me. I thought that my mental condition was fine, so I wasn't going to let my father continue looking for you." Chen Yucheng responded, "Really? Then, you've finally met me today. Indeed, I don't really have time to help you because I'm working for him right now." He pointed to Gu Jingze beside him. Abby shrugged and said, "I'm just wondering why a doctor as brilliant as you is working for him." You're a specialist with a doctorate, you're internationally renowned, you belong to a family of a long line of doctors, and you're known to be the best psychiatrist. Because he's rich, Chen Yucheng smiled and said. I don't believe it. Your family lives on the most expensive hill in America. I don't believe you need the money. Then perhaps it's because he has a charming personality. Naturally, Chen Yucheng would not say that it was because he was interested in Gu Jingze's rare illness. Abby said, I guess. Knowing that he would not reveal the reason, she did not question him further. Lin Che continued, this is Shen Yoren. She's my good friend. Right now, she's also Chen Yucheng's. Shen Yoren poked her. She immediately coughed and said, disciple, disciple. Lin Che smirked and continued, this is Shui Yong, our company's most capable rookie. He's about to be the second male lead. All you wealthy businessmen must support him in the future. Please invest money if you have it and effort if you can. Shui Yong blushed at her words. He had known early on that none of these people were ordinary. It turned out that Chen Yucheng was a world-renowned doctor whom even Abby knew. Shui Yong could only sigh in admiration. He did not expect to unknowingly follow Abby to this place. He would not have come here and joined had he known earlier that there were so many people attending the gathering. Gu Jingze sat together with Lin Che and even occasionally put food on her plate. Lin Che ate freely while enjoying special care from a wealthy businessman. She did not at all find it strange, but the rest of them started getting sick of it as they watched them. After glancing at them a few times, they got slightly used to it. Nevertheless, they were still surprised every time they saw Gu Jingze look after Lin Che as if she was a child, although it was not as surprising as it was the first time. Chen Yucheng looked at Lin Che. Did Mo Hilling point a gun at you previously? Yes. I snatched the gun away from her and threw it aside later. I really didn't think that her child would actually be Li Mingyu's. Exactly. This time, it was Li Mingyu who brought her back to a nation for treatment. I never knew that he was such a devoted person. Chen Yucheng ate while spluttering, but Mo Hilling has probably been ill for quite some time. A pregnant woman taking a gun with her to kill someone, she has already lost her mind. Even though Li Mingyu can tolerate anything at the moment because of love, this illness isn't easy to cure. She may stay like this for the rest of her life. She may suffer a relapse anytime, even if she's fine at the moment. But I'm afraid, that he will have a difficult time in the future. From my experience, it's very seldom that even family members can tolerate such an illness for 3 years, much less when it's just a woman. Shen Yoren said, it's all her own fault. When I think about the fact that she nearly shot Lin Che, I can't wait for her to die. Shen Yoren and Chen Yucheng continued debating. Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze and teased him with a low voice that only the two of them could hear, look at what happened. It's all your fault for even storing your sperm for your girlfriend in the past. How considerate of you. Gu Jingze looked at her mischievous manner and knew that she was only mocking him because the situation had been resolved. Thus, he smiled and said, I didn't do it because of some woman back then. I just felt that I may not be able to touch any woman my whole life, so it was better to plan for the future as early as I could. Lin Che played around with the rice in her bowl. Anyway, if you didn't store your sperm for no reason, you wouldn't have almost become a dad. It's so terrifying to even think about it. If someone wanted to give birth to your child and directly stole your sperm, you would definitely have countless illegitimate children all over the world. Gu Jingze felt that her way of thinking was quite unique. He bobbed her nose. My sperm is stored in a very safe place. You don't have to worry. But forget about storing it. I won't continue storing it in the future. You're right, it did create problems after all. Of course, it was rare for him to say that she was right, so Lin Che's face was brimming with arrogance. Gu Jingze smiled and came closer to her. He said into her ear, I'll store them with you in the future. What nonsense. Lin Che immediately hit him. Gu Jingze smiled and leaned backward to avoid her. The people around them could no longer tolerate it. Hey, can you guys lay off it? Yu Minmin asked. Shen Yoren had goosebumps all over. At first, I thought I had already gotten used to it. But every time I see this, I still find it horrifying. Chen Yucheng shrugged. Seems like you guys have very low immunity. Look at me, I'm completely unaffected by it now. All of this chatting in close proximity, acting coy, and flirting is child's play. You haven't seen even more disgusting things. Ah, really? Tell me about it. You're so close to Gu Jingze and you're even his personal doctor. Did you chance upon some sensational scene? Shen Yoren immediately asked with extreme interest.